Welcome back. Two phrases no resident of any city wants to hear about their local government: budget deficit and tax increase. If you live in Sarasota, you get both. Property taxes will go up next year to cover a $914,000 hole in the city's $73 million budget. How does this happen at a time when the economy is doing reasonably well? Well, there are the parks the city took over from the county, which couldn't afford to keep them up. And then there is the city-owned Bobby Jones Golf Course, which needs $650,000 in funds next year compared to $375,000 this year. Joining us for more are Martin High, the local businessman who ran for the city commission, and Kathy Antunes, the host of The Detail on WSRQ Radio. Welcome to you both, and I want to thank you for being here because many of our elected officials who voted on this would not.
Yeah. Like none of them.
Nobody wants to talk about it.
And Martin, I guess, well, the vote has already been taken. Yeah. The property tax will go up. I mean, is it fair to say it was debated? This, the commissioners, voters voted for them, and that's all there is?
Well, that's one way to look at it. In truth, the budget's set by the staff and by the city management, $229 million, not $67 million. We have our utilities, we have a lot of other sources of income, and 99.96% of what was presented in the workshops got passed. The only thing that didn't get passed was body cameras for the police department.
Kathy, I want to get into some of these details in a moment, but first I want to ask you, given that the economy has recovered to the degree that it has, how do cities like Sarasota find itself in deficit and needing to raise property tax?
Well, you got to go back to the late 70s when the cities, Longboat, Venice, Northport, and the city of Sarasota sued the county for dual taxation. They said, are we getting what we're paying for? We're paying for services we're not receiving. That went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said to the cities, you're right, you're paying full freight and you're not getting services. And that's why the county was paying for city parks. Now they're saying they can't afford it anymore. No, they don't want to pay for it. But you know what? A big chunk of my tax bill is from the county. I'm paying full freight for county parks. Seems to me the county should be paying.
All right, we just have to take a quick pause. Our conversation on Sarasota's budget deficit will continue. We're talking about the city's budget deficit and tax increase in Sarasota, and joining us for more are Martin High, the local businessman who ran for the city commission, and Kathy Antunes, the host of The Detail on WSRQ Radio. And Kathy, let me go back to you because you raised the issue of the county. They used to pay for upkeep of these parks. They basically pushed it off with some relief to the city. Obviously, the parks have to be kept up.
Right.
As the city, you don't want them to fall into disrepair.
No.
So the question becomes, who pays for it?
Right. Well, as a taxpayer, here's the thing. I think city taxpayers, I live in the city, but I also live in the county. And when I look at my tax bill, I'm paying full freight. I don't get a break on county taxes because I live in the city. So I'm paying full freight, we all are, for county parks. And it was under a lawsuit that the cities actually started getting money for their parks. And certainly county residents use city parks. So there's not a lot of common sense at the table, and certainly not a lot of respect for city taxpayers at the county level.
We're going to talk about a lot of the details here, and I also want to talk about the Bobby Jones Golf Course. But when it comes to what Kathy was just talking about, is it simply a matter of power play that the city commission has no ability to basically stick it to the county commission and say, look, you're taking our tax money, you can't short us like this?
With a red-headed stepchild, there's no question about that. There's been a conflict between the city and the county for a long time. We're not getting our fair share. If you think about the bed taxes and everything else, we are the crown jewel economically, and we don't get it back. When it comes down to it, they are tapering. We are only actually on the hook for about 900 grand of the 2.1 million that it's projected to cost, and they have increased the general fund budget by 6.6 million. So there's still another $5.7 million that no one wants to seem to talk about.
Kathy, I think you had a reaction to that.
Yeah, because we're not the red-headed stepchild. We're the gold mine.
We shouldn't.
The city is the gold mine for the county. When the city's growth pays for the county's sprawl, the city's walkable urban development generates way more tax revenue per acre than the county's auto-centric sprawl, traffic, congestion development. And taxpayers, especially those who live in the city and the county, must understand this.
Okay, we are just getting warmed up. Our conversation on Sarasota's budget deficit will continue after a quick break. Welcome back. We are talking about the budget deficit and tax increases in Sarasota. And joining us for more are Martin Hyde, a local businessman who ran for the City Commission, and Kathy Antunes, the host of The Detail on WSRQ Radio. Martin, one of the big ticket items that has often been talked about, including by Commissioner Brody, has been the Bobby Jones golf course. On one hand, I would imagine that, local residents want that golf course. It is less expensive to play at than the private golf courses around here. And then people like Hagan are openly say, why is the city involved in terms of a golf course?
Well, I mean, the golf course has been there for a long time, obviously since the 30s. When it comes down to it, things have changed. Sears was the #1 retailer in the country. Toys R Us was, Blockbuster was. Things changed. People aren't playing as much golf. That's a big factor. People's habits and behaviors have changed, and the number of rounds is down at Bobby Jones. They say it's because the courses are in bad condition. Chicken and egg, it's hard to say, but at this stage, it's been left so far. They're talking about $15 million. They already lost $650,000 this year. There almost seems no end in sight.
And Kathy, it seems to me that's the biggest chunk we're talking about here in this budget deficit.
Well, my understanding is, the immediate deficit is for those 5 parks. But if you want to speak to Bobby Jones, that's a golf course that's been around for 100 years. It has pretty important historic value. It also functions as a stormwater facility, and lots of wildlife are there. There's talk about putting trails throughout so there can be more enjoyment by the community. It's not just a golf course, and for many, many years, most of its existence, it's functioned at a profit. It's just been actually used as a cash cow by the city and not maintained properly. So knowing some golfers, I have to agree that the rate of golf in Florida, you can't compare the nation. We have a lot of golfers here, so it's not quite so simple.
And then there is everything else, and I saw Tom Barwin talk in Taylor's piece about the responsibility for pensions, and obviously that is a whole topic in an hour onto itself, and I think we have done that. But then Hagan Brody says, well, there should have been a lot of other things to cut that we didn't even get to, and as you pointed out, we're not even funding yet body cameras for police at a time in our nation's history where the public is pretty much demanding those things.
We added, in the time Tom Barwin's been here, according to the city's own figures just pulled out the other day, I said it was nearly 200, 167 the city says that they've added net in the last 5 years, and their argument is it's not as many as it was before the Great Recession. The math that the municipality is doing is how much can we get, and then how do we spend it, and that's the opposite way around that most people run their own finances. When it comes down to it, it's $229 million up from $202 million. They talk about a 3% increase in the millage rate, but property taxes, as Hagan said, have already gone up by
Don't you also have to
9.
take into consideration that the city has slowly recovered from the 2008 financial collapse, and the budget could and maybe even should go up because the city and its services was starved for so long.
We had nearly 9%. What we've added is a lot of management. We have 2 assistant city managers and a city manager. Another point they were making about the general raise, I have no problem people having a cost of living raise, but a lot of the people that live in the city are on a fixed income. They talk about it as not very much money, but it's not their money.
So Kathy, you speak to this for a moment, because a lot of people who are watching this right now, they're going to write in and they say, do not raise taxes, period. They don't want to hear what it's for and whether it's really needed or not. People, especially around here, think that they are overtaxed enough.
Yeah, well, I would say you have a point, and you need to look to your county commission, because we are paying full freight to the county, and they decided, this interlocal agreement that was the result of a lawsuit in the late 70s expired in around 2012. And so the county, not only at the back end of the agreement, was not maintaining facilities properly. So, if you're not going to be responsible in the next 5 years, you just start not maintaining things. And they're not feeling any responsibility to county taxpayers who live in the cities until city residents get on board.
But what about Martin's point that we certainly are creating more positions within city government, and there are some raises going on there? How do you give even senior members of this government a raise while you're raising taxes?
Well, it's $36 a year for a $200,000 home. We're still in the bottom quartile of cities when it comes to millage rates. We need to look at the total picture. And we were operating with skeleton staff when the economy took a big dive. People expect a high quality of life here. I know I do. And I feel that we are paying full freight. And if you really want to see a change in city budget deficits and more equity in taxation, that single-member districts for the county commission is an issue.
We happen to be doing that show on Thursday. But Martin, while I have you here, how about, should people's anger be in terms of how this budget was created and the problem within the city government? Or does Kathy have a point that, Sarasota should be sticking it to the county commission and say, our tax money is going to you, we're not getting our money's worth?
That's a part of it, but it's not the whole part of it. The city manager was on $208,000 a year. We have 15 people in the city making more than $120,000 a year. We're giving them automatic 3% raises. The guy that's making 30 grand a year, that's $80 a month. The guy that's a city manager, he's going to get around about $500 a month. There's no equity there. There's no justification. He doesn't need that money.
Okay, we have to leave it there. We want to thank you both. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers had to say about last night's exclusive interview with former Senator and Governor Bob Graham. The former senator's visit comes as President Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump refusing to acknowledge Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election, despite a federal grand jury indicting 12 Russians last week. Graham says it is time for Congress to get on the ball and hold Trump accountable on his stance with Russia. We went to Facebook for your thoughts, and Barbara says, I was glad you had him on today. Most of us are in shock at the treason committed today. It's a sad day in America. But Brian says Trump is turning out to be a great president. Glad to see him sit face to face and talk with the leaders of Russia and North Korea. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. We want to thank Martin Hyde, a local businessman who ran for the City Commission, and Kathy Antunes, the host of The Detail on WSRQ Radio, for joining us tonight.